Okay, 152 yards to the flag on the fairway. What you're choosing, 7-iron or 7 hybrid? Well, in today's video, I'm going to give you some answers from off the fairways in reality. So what we're going to do, we're going to take a 7-iron, as I say, 30-degree 7-iron, a P790 from TaylorMade, and I'm going to pitch it up against a hybrid, which is from the company 11. It's 31 degrees. I did a recent video indoors with data. We know what it says, but what happens when we go off a tight lie on the fairway? We play out of the rough and we play off a tee peg. How does all that data match up when it comes out here on the golf course? Right, great strike, bit off the bottom grooves. Just about made the front edge. It was 152 to the flag. Actually got a little bit of help down breeze, so I'm a bit surprised. It's probably pulled up a yard short of the green. It was okay. Ball flight was pretty much standard as I expect with a 7-iron in hand. No excuses, nothing in the way, no rough to contend with. I'm going to go from the exact same position, and this time I'm going to drop a ball and go straight for the 7 hybrid. Let's see what happens. Well, the first thing that happens is the confidence level jumps up massively, and that might only be a personal thing and something that's sort of changing in my brain over the last year or two, but I'm looking down on what I always say the same thing: a lot of club head, a lot of loft, and I don't feel like I need to do a great deal to get this one down there. Oh, and what a shot. I've just leaked it out to the right. Carry different, it's ridiculously different. So we've got a club here, don't forget, that is 1 degree weaker in loft. The ball flight is what seems like twice its height, and the carry distance, we'll go and check when we get down there, was probably, I think that could be as much as 15 to 20 yards further. So from a tight lie on the fairway, very standard situation, I'm really sort of questioning, why am I going for a 7-iron when I can go for something like the 7 hybrid? But that's just one scenario. What happens when we pop the ball into the rough? Is it a similar result? Right, first ball with the 7-iron. Don't normally zap a flag. It's 16 yards short, so not the greatest of results, to be honest with you, and probably down to my poor strike off the bottom grooves. But don't forget, we're only playing 152 to the flag, and then the other ball is carried away in the distance there, which I don't really even pick that up on camera. And I'll zap it in terms of, or mark out a distance difference, but we don't need to. It's sort of 30, 40 yards in terms of difference in distance travelled. That in itself is not necessarily a huge positive. We've got to be able to control ball flight, we've got to understand where each club goes. But it does surprise me that when we get out on the golf course, the first strike with the 7-iron, maybe not as clean as that of the 7 hybrid, but isn't that really what we're testing? And is that really what forgiveness looks like? So another scenario that we find ourselves in, and that's playing off a tee peg. You're going to hit 7-iron in most instances into a par 3 with this kind of situation. I've got to say, I've done similar tests where you put perhaps a 5-iron compared with a 9 wood we did in recent weeks. When you put the 5-iron behind the ball, confidence starts to dip a little bit because you see less loft, and it gets a little bit concerning. I don't have that same issue when I put a 7-iron behind the ball. Very confident at this end of the bag. So there's no kind of visible difference that sort of puts me off and persuades me to go the other way into the hybrid, which was a negative with the 5-iron review. That's what I'm basically trying to say. That's again, it's a really good strike. Great ball flight, better than the first. We're only aiming down range at the moment. No green exactly, but the ball has pitched and stopped, and absolutely superb. No issues with that whatsoever. But again, it's that what happens next when I move into the 7 hybrid. Well, I think in many ways it's almost like the polar opposite this, about when you see a lot of club behind the ball, you know you've got the loft in terms of 31 degrees, but our mindset has been trained to thinking that hybrids hit the ball a long way. So it's hard to trust the loft. So it's almost a negative impact. You tend to swing a little bit easier, I feel, with the hybrids than you perhaps should do. And you've got to put faith in the fact that this club has been built and designed, and the loft and all the rest of the characteristics are there to make the ball travel in the way that it should do. And again, super shot, really happy with those two. I don't think there's anywhere near the kind of difference that we found on the first situation where we come from the fairway. The ball flight was a lot higher this time around again from the hybrid, and it seems to have travelled that little bit further. But the thing for me is, if you're going down this route of the lofted hybrid option, you really have got to commit to the swing, trust the way the club has been put together, and you get some pretty interesting results. And for me, if that's coming down, landing on a green from that kind of peak height, that kind of descent angle, then it's literally stopping on a sixpence. Really interesting point, I reckon, on this one. That is the 7 hybrid and that is the 7 iron. So distance wise, virtually no difference, maybe 3-4 yards longer with the hybrid. But I think it's really interesting the fact that we're playing into the wind, and on the first shots that we played from the fairway, we're playing downwind. And I think that's a big factor. There's definitely, from the data that we discovered indoors, is that the hybrid does spin a lot more than what the 7 iron does. So what you've got a scenario there is we're playing into the wind, high ball flight, spin is maybe a bit too high, so the ball hovers a little bit. Now again, if you dial in those numbers, it's not necessarily the end of the world, but it's something to be aware of, and why all of a sudden from going down breeze to into, there's such a big difference in the performance in terms of where they've got to. So on that occasion, the more penetrating flight, the lower spinning ball that the 7 iron produced ended up being, the end result is the ball end up in exactly the same position. And these are things you need to be aware of when you're buying golf clubs. There are many different elements that go in to the performance and how your ball gets from A to B. And it's important that you buy the right clubs that suit your swing type as well. So as I understand, there is a new feature on YouTube. There's not just the like button, you can also hit the hype button. And if you do that, what it helps us to do is the video grow, it gets in front of more viewers, and we are all happy people. Right, the next scenario, one that most average golfers will find themselves in quite often, and that's in the rough. Now, it's not the end of the world. We're nestled down a tad, and 7 iron, I'm sure we're all comfortable with that, plenty of, or enough loft rather. But what happens in terms of spin? We do a lot of testing with TrackMan, but we hit off a nice clean mat and we don't get the imperfections that you find out on a golf course. So I'm also interested to know what happens with the golf ball performance when it comes to resty, and also if it impacts ball flight as well. Well, it's chased out, it seems to, it's a bit of a flyer, as they'd say. Yeah, now all of a sudden, that's incredible. That's almost really case in point, and I'm really, in a way, pleased that that's happened out on the fairways, because what you've seen there is where all of a sudden the spin and the control that can be achieved from a clean lie is lost when you play out the rough. That landed, I would say, perhaps pin high and has chased on right through to the back. We didn't get a great deal on it in terms of spin or control whatsoever. So now I'm really interested to know that question that's in your mind as well, what happens with a 7 hybrid equivalent? Okay, so we tried to match up the scenarios. Interesting enough, by the way, we're playing 156 with a wind off the right. So it's a really well struck 7 iron, which I'm pleased about, but surprised at where that chased through to. This could be the nail in the coffin for the 7 iron. Yeah, it's a shame. It was just a yard right of being absolutely perfect, but the telltale sign really is not that it ended up, we're pin high is where we finished. We got a little kick to the right. We'd be disappointed with the end result, but ultimately ball flight so different coming out of that lie. It's picked it up so much easier, cut through the grass or cut through the rough and pop the ball out with exactly the same ball flight that we've seen in other scenarios. But then the difference is when it lands and hits the green, it's stopped within a couple of yards. It's hugely different, and probably the biggest surprise we've had in testing, and why outdoor on-course testing is so important, to see the real differences between each characteristic that TrackMan throws up. Two major differences, and if you come forward, and the 7 iron has actually gone right through to the back there, pin being just pretty much in line with where I am now. It's pitched up just behind me and then just kicked on right through. These greens are fairly soft right now, so that was a surprise. You can't quite see the other ball where it finished, but you can see the pitch mark quite clearly. Has come in where my foot is, and we've just trickled off onto that side, landed pin high, and has stopped again within a few yards of its landing position. And that was largely due to the descent angle that it came down from. Obviously we can't quantify spin out on the golf course, but we can certainly see ball flight, and they were two very, very different shots indeed. That's me done. I'll try to keep these simple and straightforward. This was a follow-on from a video that we did indoors on TrackMan, and we did see data that would suggest this would happen out on the golf course, but for me it's always nice to see it in reality, and I know a lot of you requested that we come out and do this test outdoor. So we've got a couple going on currently. I think we've done a 5-iron versus a 9-wood. It's a similar sort of concept. It's a loft for loft equivalent iron versus hybrids or fairway woods, and what do they do in terms of difference. And I think the big question you need to ask yourself, more so than any I think at this stage, is what type of swing have you got? What type of swing speed have you got? Because ultimately that will be a large dictator in where you end up with your irons versus hybrids versus fairway woods. That's the big separator, in my opinion, at least. Anyway, main thing is, understand this is my testing, my swing speed, not yours. So go out and do it yourself, see where you get to, and make sure when you make an investment, it's the right one that best suits your game. Right, as ever, thank you for watching. Don't forget, hit that hype button, and I will see you all very soon. Thanks for watching.